a skater, an athlete, and a person this year.
Why?
What did you get to?
I don't know, some hard black stick.
If you're anything like me, that clip you just watched probably raised a lot of questions. Who's the woman screaming? Why is she screaming? What exactly happened behind those curtains? And why are we in a skating rink? And if you think that clip alone is strange, what's even stranger is the events surrounding this story. The story that led Nancy Kerrigan to the knee break incident that left her in utter agony. To completely understand how exactly we got here, we have to go back in time to a period that on the surface felt extremely simple. The 90s. A truly unprecedented time where you could engage with the internet and learn about whatever you want, whenever you want, and still somehow be able to actually disconnect from the world without bringing everything with you everywhere you went. When you inevitably ended up back at your dirty off-white PC, one of the names that is likely to end up on your feed as the Summer Olympics were wrapping up was Nancy Kerrigan, along with her, at the time, undeniable rival Tonya Harding. Tonya Harding was, in all circumstances, an underdog. She didn't come from money, she struggled very much throughout her entire childhood, and really only had one little hope of escape from her situation: figure skating. Amongst the many moves and money issues, ice skating was the one thing that Tonya had control over in her life, as she had such a natural ability for it. So much so that her parents, who were by no means well off, began pouring every penny that they could into her career, hoping that one day it would pay off and get them out of poverty. And although it doesn't seem like much to invest into an ice skating career, it was expensive, right? And if you didn't know much like me before researching this video, expensive it could be. Most of the costs stemmed from the fact that you had to have these extravagant outfits, you had to have lessons, you had to be able to pay for travel and actually go and compete in these competitions. It was not cheap. And this is coming from somebody who, after like a decade of playing Melee, which is one of the cheapest hobbies out there, I still haven't gone to a national just because I don't want to pay $600 out of my own pocket. And this is 2 adults supporting her, so very expensive. Even while working multiple jobs, Tonya's mom still had to make her outfits and costumes by hand, which is a little bit wholesome, even though her upbringing is said to be a little bit sad, the way that they kind of pressure into doing the ice skating. But I can assure you, even with her making the outfits, this was an incredible disadvantage, as appearance and artistry do play a factor when it comes to judging ice skating, which to me is a bit silly. But you know, hey, I don't figure skate, so I don't know. Maybe somebody in the comments can shed light on why appearance is so important, because it seems like nowadays we've done away with societal norms and are breaking prejudice slowly with each new event and each new star that breaks the internet. But back in the day, there was an expectation to look and act a certain way on the ice. Women were to be elegant, graceful, pretty, dressed to the nines. And then there was Tonya, who, despite her family's best efforts, just never looked the part. She was tough, athletic, and homemade, which is quite the opposite to what's expected of someone trying to break into figure skating. While she did make up for it with her technical ability and athleticism, it's still widely considered the main reason that she had such a hard time attaining such incredible scores. The one thing carrying her being her triple axel jump that no one could do besides her in tournament. Kind of insane watching these for the first time, because while the other girls are just doing their, normal routines and looking nice and elegant and getting these extremely high scores with ease, you had Tonya over there like just absolutely killing it. And she had to hit this move every time just to force herself to be in the top of the competition. Like, it was something that was just too hard to ignore. The bias was very clear with the judges, and if she would mess up this one technique, she would be at the bottom rung for that day. So it was incredibly difficult to maintain this level of ice skating, right? Imagine having to always hit a home run every single time you went up to bat, or you had to bowl a 300 every time you stepped onto the alley. Right? It's just not feasible, especially considering the fact that she was doing all of this just to stay afloat in the competitions. It's not like she was even outright winning. She was doing all this extra work just to barely make it into the top of the competition, while other competitors like Nancy Kerrigan were able to scoot on by without having anywhere near her technical ability, just because they were better presented. And it's not to say that the other performers didn't have the athleticism or whatnot. When you compare how much more athletic Tonya Harding was, it was just a no-brainer. But this is why Nancy Kerrigan became Tonya Harding's natural rival. In all aspects, Nancy Kerrigan was the complete opposite. She did grow up in a similar situation to Tonya Harding, but her and her family went a completely different route. While Tonya Harding was born out of brute force and hard work, Nancy Kerrigan was carefully crafted through a stable, more welcoming environment. Her parents, too, worked multiple jobs to keep her ice skating career going, and it wasn't too long before her elegant style and image began bringing in sponsorships and deals that made it a hell of a lot easier to continue competing. With most of these amazing opportunities just naturally stepping into her life after her bronze medal finish in 1992. For a second, I want you to imagine what this is like for Tonya Harding watching Nancy Kerrigan's career, right? You both have similar upbringings on paper, rags to riches, but your specific career tanked just because you wouldn't conform. There is your rival who is, again, grown up in a very similar situation from poverty into this ice skating career, and they're getting sponsorships and deals just because they're presented a little bit nicer and they look a little more elegant. And the reason I mention this is because this is a clear motive. When I look back at this story after digesting the entire thing, it's very clear that there was definitely some jealousy here. When you read through what actually happened after the fact with the court proceedings and whatnot, it's very clear that a lot of this stemmed from Tonya Harding, even though on paper she had nothing to do with it. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But this is where the events surrounding the clip from the beginning start falling into place. It wouldn't be until nearly 2 years that Tonya would have a chance at all those opportunities, with the biggest one being the 1994 United States Figure Skating Championships. The winner of this championship being given a gateway into the Winter Olympics. Tonya needed a way to guarantee her spot, so a scheme was put into motion. And this scheme or plan was simple. Before the 1994 United States Figure Skating Championships, the very thing that would determine who would get to go to the 94 Winter Olympics, Nancy Kerrigan had to be taken out of commission by any means necessary. But who was going to do this? Who was the person to step up and take on this villainous task? Tonya's abusive ex-husband. And I'm not kidding, right? It's such a weird thing when I was reading this story, because if we're to take it at face value, it feels like Tonya was just very much on the outskirts of this and just doing her ice skating career, and her husband just took it upon himself to go and collude with like 2 other people to make this happen. Even Tonya has gone on record explicitly stating just how bad her ex-husband Jeff Gillooly was to her, and yet she was still with him for a very long time. I state all that because I think it's necessary to understand just how weird and messed up this situation was. It was messy all around, and at least from what I've researched, the plan to take Nancy Kerrigan out of commission technically had no involvement from Tonya herself. I'll go into this a little bit later, but it's not that she really was involved in the planning, but it's very clear that she did know this was going to happen. And there's lots of theories surrounding it. The one that I choose to believe that I feel like makes the most sense is that she overheard her husband and the friends of the husband talking about doing it. And she always thought, like, given her emotional state at the time, how abusive he was, like, I can totally see a world where Tonya overhears all this planning and it's just like, there's no way they're actually going to do that. But there could have been a small part of her that was like, even if it is true, it's gonna benefit me. Why would I do anything about it? I say that because there's gonna be someone out here who thinks that I'm trying to allude to the fact that she planned it. She technically, on paper, has never been convicted for this, and has never had any evidence that she did help plan it. The original plan appears to have been hatched up by 3 people: Tanya's husband, Jeff Gillooly, his friend, Sean Eckert, and another accomplice named Derek Smith. The 3 of them figured that if they were to guarantee Tanya's success by getting her to the Olympics, they'd be able to ride her coattails into a life of luxury, like Nancy Kerrigan, who had already been living like a queen at this point in time. So the 3 of them enacted a plan to take out Nancy Kerrigan entirely and ensure that Tonya Harding would make it to the Olympics. And their grandiose plan? To break her kneecaps. That was literally it. That was their entire plan. They could have written it on a napkin from McDonald's. And all they had to do was wait for the perfect time and the perfect place, which for them wasn't too far along. January 6th, 1994. The U.S. Figure Skating Championships are already underway at the Cobo Arena. Tons of participants are preparing for their shot at representing the United States at the upcoming Winter Olympics. Among them is Nancy Kerrigan, who wasn't here for fun. She, just like every other competitor, was there to win, and could be found practicing amongst the sea of competitors, while behind the scenes, the building became quite crowded and was surprisingly unsecured. There was skaters moving in and out of the ice rink, coaches following closely behind, with media crews wandering about, looking to capture great footage of competitors like Nancy, as tons of staff and tourists were passing through the corridors. In short, there was just way too many people here. So many people that it actually allowed our 3 idiots plan to work flawlessly. It was so easy to blend in because everyone was so focused on the competition ahead, with the only real concern being the media crews as they were capturing practice footage, interviews, and general behind the scenes moments. And obviously, it wasn't completely out of the ordinary for crews to just follow the best of the best around, as was the case with Nancy Kerrigan. As she finished one of her practice sessions, she stepped off the ice and began making her way through one of the many connecting hallways in the stadium into what appeared to be locker rooms. The camera crew follows closely behind her until she leaves through the curtains, to which they cut and seemingly go to record other skaters. And that exact moment when the camera cut is when the unthinkable happened.
What happened? Why?
What did you get to?
I don't know, some hard black stick. Something really hard. Help me. We're gonna get you in the training room here.
Nancy Kerrigan had just been struck with a baton below her right knee, dropping to the ground, confused, scared, and feeling hopeless, as she came to the far too real realization that this may be it for her career. If she can't compete in the championships, it's over. Screaming, why? Why did this happen to me? Why now? Why, when I'm at the peak of my career, does this happen to me? What have I done to deserve this? And she's right. Imagine all you've done is just skate around and look pretty, only for someone's jealousy and evilness be the cause of your potential downfall. And that's what's so infuriating about this story, and why I chose to cover it. Although the footage is horrifying, the story actually played out in one of the best ways possible. Before we get there, who was behind this, right? I kind of skipped over the entire story, and it's because I don't want to give these guys the time of day. The actual person that went through and did the deed was named Shane Stant, who was a friend of Sean Eckert. Both of them were associated with Tonya Harding's, at the time, ex-husband Jeff Gillooly. Sean served as the middleman of this entire scheme. He was a self-proclaimed security expert, serving as a bodyguard to Tonya Harding and Jeff Gillooly for quite some time, and was the person who set this plan in motion. And this guy, for all intents and purposes, was delusional, having claimed to have done missions and secret ops for the government and been the bodyguard to some very important people.
And not Jeff Gillooly, and that you had all these fantasies of terrorist to counter-espionage, and that this whole thing was something you cooked up to fulfill a deranged fantasy.
Incorrect. My training and education has been in the areas of counter-espionage and counterterrorism. I've done extensive research in the areas of terrorism trends and profiles. I've been quoted as an expert on terrorism trends and profiles.
Where?
And I believe it was it was a travel magazine a couple of years ago during the Gulf War.
Because you know the resume.
Yes.
He's one of those guys that would definitely, on the playground, had a dad who always seemed to be magically making more money than yours, or had GTA 6 before it was released, but I can't show you, it's top secret, my dad won't show me. Like, you know what I mean? Just a true self-absorbed liar. And of course, he didn't want to carry it out himself, right? Even though he devised this entire plan, Sean didn't even do the dirty work. He hired somebody else through Derek Smith, which was Shane Stant. They were essentially promising this guy money up front to injure Kerrigan badly enough that she couldn't compete. Just walk up, hit her hard in the knee, and leave. From his perspective, that's exactly what happened. What you can't see from this footage is Shane Stant slowly lurking behind the camera crew, waiting for them to stop filming. And once they do, that's when he struck Nancy, fled the scene in the getaway car with his uncle, Derek Smith. That's the situation right before the Winter Olympics. Just that little part of it is just so weird to me, that like the ex-husband and Sean devise this plan, and then they have two completely separate dudes who weren't even originally part of it just go carry out the dirty work for them. But that was the situation right before the Winter Olympics. And if I were to end the segment right here, it would kind of sound like Tonya Harding made out like a bandit, because yeah, Nancy Kerrigan couldn't compete in that championship tournament that she was at, and it was fairly obvious who the winner would be: Tonya Harding. And Tonya Harding did find herself as the sole winner of the 1994 championships, but it wasn't without controversy, right? Obviously, people aren't stupid. They, even for the 90s, had many media channels picking up the story and were already accusing Tonya Harding of the obvious, right? Are you the reason Nancy isn't competing? And somehow she was allowed to compete in the Olympics despite the ongoing investigation and all the evidence at the time pointing to her involvement. Her argument is the exact reason why I hate the US justice system, and it's that she should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. She rode that one statement all the way up until the 1994 Winter Olympics. She just never expected that her competition will be making an unexpected return. To her surprise, Nancy Kerrigan, the person who had a hit placed on her to keep her from this very moment at the Olympics, was back. And not in some quiet, under the radar way either. She wanted everyone to know that she knew. She knew the whole world was watching, right? Even donning the same exact white outfit that the attack took place in. Every media outlet captured her at her lowest moment. And now they were going to capture her at her highest. It's literally one of the greatest moments that I've ever read about, and I think it's so amazing. Just weeks after having your knee smashed in with the baton, you step into the ice at the Winter Olympics as if nothing really happened. Like, if you really sit with that for a second, it's insane. Here she was performing again at the highest level possible. Still beautiful, still controlled, clean, and intentional with every movement that she did on the ice. And if you were expecting some crazy high-stakes story at this point with Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan being neck and neck the entire competition, this ain't that kind of story. Tonya Harding, the person who had every advantage going into this, completely crumbled and fell apart when it came down to it, failing to land her signature move that got her here with numerous mistakes and fumbles, finishing 8th place, nearly 6 places behind her rival, the one she just happily watched get taken out of the running weeks prior. And you did hear that right. 6 places above was Nancy Kerrigan. Despite all the odds against her, somehow won the silver medal, the second best in the entire world. After everything that she had gone through in the past few weeks, there she stood on the podium, one spot higher than the previous podium that set all of these plans into motion. Now, I always found the story to be quite compelling because it's one of the few where the bad people got what was coming to them. Tonya Harding's career took a massive plummet after this, with her admitting to, at the very least, knowing about the plan after it had occurred, with there being tons of evidence laid out from both the investigation and later findings that pointed to something more. Investigators uncovered phone records linking people involved before the attack, along with the testimony from Sean himself detailing how the plan was set in motion. All this, and Harding still publicly claims that she was never involved, even though a lot of the grand jury findings and the U.S. Figure Skating Association having their own independent investigation conclude that there's a lot of strong evidence that she at the very least knew more than she let on, especially at the time, and definitely knew about the attack beforehand. Her and her ex-husband served very different punishments. Harding pleaded guilty to hindering prosecution. Tonya Harding taking a plea deal, receiving 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a $160,000 fine before ultimately being banned from life from the U.S. figure skating competition, stripped of her national title. Jeff Gillooly, who helped orchestrate the entire attack, pleaded guilty to racketeering and served 2 years in prison, with the other accomplices facing 18 months in prison for their roles in planning and carrying out the attack. Nancy was just living her life, doing good by her family and by her, and this extremely horrible thing happened to her. Her knee was completely busted weeks before her competition, and still you go standing like a badass on the podium with your rival again in an even worse spot, wishing that they were where you stand. It just goes to show that not every single disturbing moment caught on film stays that way. And although the footage was quite horrifying upon first glance, maybe now I've opened your eyes to why I find these moments to be compelling under the right lens.
Himself from the start house, intent in this his first Olympic Games on clocking the fastest time possible. The luge athlete from Georgia was speeding on this his second practice run of the morning. Coming out of the 16th turn, the last one on the course, speeding at 144 kilometers an hour, he loses control. The 21-year-old is thrown.
I never really watched the Olympics until I was out of high school around 2018. And each time I've tuned into like the Winter Olympics, I've always wondered why bobsledding was a thing. It's always lived in that like NASCAR monster truck part of my brain where watching it on TV feels like an absolute snooze fest, but in reality, when you're there in person experiencing it, they're some of the most dangerous sports that a person can partake in. The reason I'm saying all that is because I was very shocked to learn of a story that took place in 2010 during that year's Winter Olympics, where one Olympic athlete's life was taken due to poor track design and honestly a ton of oversight. His name was Nodar Kumaritashvili. The craziest part of his story is that nothing about what he was doing that day was out of the ordinary. Nodar was a 21-year-old luger from the country of Georgia. And for my other uninformed American friends like me who did not know what a luge was before this video, it's just another word for bobsled. You have luge, skeleton, and bobsled, which are all various different forms of essentially the same sport. You have some ice, a track made of that ice, and a person or persons that will go down said ice track in a vehicle of some sort. Whether that vehicle is huge, small, or extremely lean is dependent on if it's a luge, a skeleton, or a bobsled. And Nodar had been doing the former of those choices all his life. With the help of his grandfather, he was introduced to the sport in Georgia, where his father competed and his uncle literally ran the Georgian Luge Federation. One could say that he was born to be an Olympic professional at it, allowing him to be coached by the masters from such a young age. Although Nodar was built to become an Olympic competitor like most Olympic athletes from a very young age, his journey was anything but glamorous. This meant cold mornings, traveling to tracks that weren't his, trying to compete against athletes from other countries that had years of experience on him. You name it. But by the late 2000s, Nodar had worked his way into international competition, beginning in the 2008 to 09 Luge World Cup season. In that first stretch, he entered 4 World Cup races, and by the 2009 and 2010 season, he was still grinding his way upward, finishing 28th at the World Cup stop in Cesana Pariol in January 2010, and sitting 44th overall in the World Cup standings. All of that lore and history to say, this guy worked hella hard to get where he was. Every step of the way. I have to imagine his eyes were on competing in the Olympics at some point, and of course, wanting to make his uncle and father proud. When you look at his results, they're not really that impressive, but they have a clear trend upwards, right? This guy was the kind of person who kind of was in the middle of the pack for a lot of these competitions, and in some aspects was a bit of an underdog, but he was definitely on the up and up. The kind of person who didn't have any kind of generational run to put him on the map. He would have to earn his spot in the 2010 Winter Olympics through sheer grit and determination, which is exactly what happened by the end of 2009, just barely qualifying through the various competitions around the states to earn himself a spot and a chance to prove himself amongst the greats. This was truly impressive because at the end of the day, he really was just some guy from Georgia who found himself in this lifestyle of luge competition and found himself in the Winter Olympics with something to prove, which really makes what happened that much more tragic. The year is 2010. We are gearing up to have one of the biggest winter sporting events on the planet, with the Vancouver Winter Olympics being presented as this massive global spectacle. New country, new venue, and a brand new track, as all eyes were on the Whistler Sliding Center, which was the nickname given to the track being used. And this was, at the time, one of the fastest sliding tracks ever to be built. And when I say fast, I mean dangerously fast. Athletes were recorded to be hitting speeds of close to 90 miles per hour, with the track having already produced speeds over 150 kilometers per hour during testing and competition prep. All that speed contained on this little thing, with no protection at all. And if you think that sounds insane, it's because it fucking was. This sparked conversation over the track's safety, which was ultimately dismissed, or at the very least, downplayed. There had already been crashes during training, and years before the games, there were concerns about just how fast the Whistler really was. Even after test events, officials from the Luge Federation had expressed worry over speed calculations being exceeded. But like a lot of stories involving any kind of giant organization or giant massive events, the general vibe seemed to be less of let's slow it down and rebuild it, and more of let's just deal with it. Just deal with it. It's already made. And this is what makes Nodar's story so heartbreaking and why it disturbs me so much. Again, one of the things I really hate in life is when someone is just going about their normal routine without doing anything illegal, malicious, and somehow they end up in an unfortunate situation due to someone else's carelessness. He wasn't some reckless guy doing dumb shit for attention. He was a 21-year-old kid from Georgia who had single-handedly clawed his way into the Olympics from a country that didn't have the same resources, didn't have the same track access, or the support system that the powerhouses of this sport had. He earned his place there rightfully, and he had every right to be there. And on February 12th, 2010, the day of the opening ceremony, he stepped onto that track for what was supposed to be just another official training run. He had done this thousands of times. Nadar geared up to take on the new track, and before he knew it, he was off. As he made his way down the course, he lost control near the final turn, one of the fastest and most violent sections of the entire track. At one point, he was traveling roughly 143.6 kilometers per hour, or for my American friends, 89 miles per hour. And his sled hit the wall, launching him up and out of the track, where he struck an unpadded steel support beam. It happened in seconds. If you've ever watched anything like the NASCAR crash, it was exactly the same thing. Medical staff rushed to him immediately. CPR was performed at the scene as he was airlifted to a hospital in Whistler. The injuries were too severe, and he was pronounced dead later that day. He was only 21 years old. Unlike the Tanya Harding story, this one doesn't have some external being to blame this on. You could blame the Olympic Federation, right? They'd be one entity to blame. But even then, it bothers me that there's really no justice to be had in stories like this, right? That's what makes the footage just that much harder to watch and sit with. It feels very reminiscent of other videos that I've talked about on the channel, like the Russian brick incident, where they're not just some like freak stunt gone wrong. They feel preventable. After this happens, the track was immediately changed. So they could have done it. Like, they could have changed it, right? The men's start was moved lower to reduce speed. The wall at the final curve was raised, and the exposed area near the end of the course was altered, all before the competition resumed. And that proves to me that they could have fucking changed it, and they chose not to, right? They willingly chose not to do the work because it was easier to take a chance on someone not getting hurt, despite the high likelihood of a disaster like Nadar's happening. And that just tells you everything you need to know. If all that was able to be changed right after somebody died, then clearly there were things about this setup that were not as untouchable as people want to pretend that they were. And I say that because when I read all the investigations that would describe his death as a result of an interaction of factors, right? The track speed, its technical difficulty, some even kind of trying to point to the fact that Nadar's relative unfamiliarity with that course, as if it's his fault. It's that last part that really sticks with me, because how can you even victim blame somebody in this situation, right? Of course he's not going to be familiar with the setup. It's a new course. As somber as it is, it's not sensational or some over-the-top sports scandal. It's just one of the clearest examples of how quickly a dream can turn into a nightmare. Just goes to show how powerless we truly are in some aspects of life. From my perspective, Nadar Kumaritashvili did everything right. He trained his entire life, earned his place, showed up to the Olympics, and trusted that the stage set for him was one designed to let him compete, not die. And instead, on the biggest day of his entire life, the entire world watched that trust get shattered in an instant. My heart goes out to the family and to anyone that had to witness this moment live. I just hope that in telling this tragic story that we remember Nadar for the competitor and the man that he was. Because in all honesty, he was a lot more than what ended up happening on that track. Now, I don't like leaving my viewers off with a sad note, and given the new changes to YouTube's algorithm, I want to give everyone something to look forward to. Because I feel like nowadays it's so easy to cling on to the dark and disturbing, especially if you're watching a channel like this. And what I used to do on my channel is I would post like really lighthearted content separate from the deep, dark, and disturbing. But I feel like nowadays that just doesn't work anymore. So please enjoy a drastic jump into this fairly hilarious yet disturbing ending to this video as we talk about one of the most infamous theme parks ever to date. This is so ridiculous, dude. Oh my god, I still can't believe this is real. Oh my god, dude. I'm so sorry for laughing too, because like this just looks like this just looks like a kid in kindergarten was given an art assignment and the assignment just said draw a cool water slide at a theme park. Right? If you asked a kid to draw a cool water slide at a theme park, it's equally bare bones and somehow fucking terrifying. Like, when you first look at it, you can make out that it's just a water slide with a loop-de-loop, but somehow it's uncanny. Like, someone put this on like r/liminal spaces or something, and it just doesn't look real. But this is real, right? This is an actual thing that happened. It feels weird to look at it because you would never see this in any reputable water park, and the reason you wouldn't is because a hard loop like this is basically impossible to actually go through smoothly. If you've ever watched Tony Hawk's Loop of Death or learned anything about roller coasters, especially the first roller coasters to utilize loops, you would know that a perfect circle isn't actually what you want for any kind of loop in a ride. The amount of force and perfect amount of factors that need to line up in order for a smooth journey through one of those, it's just not feasible, or at least it's not consistently feasible. This is why every roller coaster nowadays utilizes these oval-shaped loops. These greatly reduce the amount of force exerted on the person going through it, making it easier to do time and time again. For context, the Flip Flap Railway, which is the first roller coaster to have a loop, is said to have put almost 10 Gs of force on you. And I'm not kidding. When you are going through this kind of loop, that is how much force it exerts on your body, which is just insane to think about. And it's all because it's a perfect circle, right? Using an oval allows this to stop happening. So take away the safety of a roller coaster, which has lap bars, overhang bars, seat belts, and numerous fail-safes. Take all that away, and now it's just your bare body and the loop. That's essentially the situation we had at Action Park's 1983 Cannonball Loop. This ride is so infamous that it has all these rumors and stories that originate from the testing of the ride, not even the grand opening, where it said that test dummies were leaving the slide missing limbs, people having their teeth knocked out, and even having to pay employees to ride the ride instead of test experts. And a good chunk of what I just said, or basically everything I just said, was confirmed by American film director Seth Porges, the creator of the Class Action Park documentary. There exists an interview on YouTube where he explicitly talks about how this ride came to be. And from his testimony, the owner of the park drew the ride on a cocktail napkin and just said, "Let's build this." And then they hired someone crazy enough to build it. It's literally what I described in the beginning of like, this looks like a child was just like, this would be sick. And they just made it. Like, it's so damn silly, dude. As the park would end up opening the ride in the year 1985, 2 years after they publicly announced the opening date of 1983. And it was open to the public's awe because, again, when have you ever seen a water slide like this? If you were one of the rare people who actually got a chance to ride it, the process was so Mickey Mouse, right? Upon lining up to the humongous tower in front of you, they'd size you up, as weight and height did matter for this. If you were too light, you might cling around in the loop. If you were too heavy, you might not even make it around the first hump. And that included having to take off your jewelry and any wearables, and they would hose you down with cold water beforehand just to make sure that you were slippery enough, right? So if the sketchy climb up the wooden staircase wasn't enough, I think this pre-screening was definitely enough to raise red flags. Yet we have many stories of people flying down the Cannonball Loop. It was basically a free drop into an instant force of gravity on you. Some described it as being slammed around inside of a pipe. Others said it was too fast that they didn't even have time to register they were going upside down. And the unlucky lot that either didn't have enough speed or instinctively tried to slow themselves down wouldn't even make it all the way around the loop. They would get right to the peak at the top and slam straight down into the bottom. This happened so much that they had to build in an emergency latch at the top just to pull people out. And if that wasn't bad enough, there were many accounts of people coming out of the ride with abrasions, cuts, and often bleeding due to teeth being embedded in the plastic at the top of the loop, from people slamming their heads down after getting to the top and not making it all the way around. You know, I guess this isn't so much a disturbing moment caught on film as much as it is like a disturbing piece of history caught on film. You just never hear about stuff like this, like, ever. And I don't know, maybe I'll make a video on like Action Park, because I just think it's so interesting how all of these rides came to be. This isn't even like the worst one, dude. This is just the one that caught my eye. Like when you look at that picture, dude, it just looks so ominous. Oh my, I've shown so many people this picture and just like, can you believe this actually existed? And yeah, like it really did. And people got hurt on it. It's just one of the many factors that ultimately led to Action Park's inevitable shutdown. But I'll save all that for another video. I just like to end my videos off with a bit of a high point, which is why I chose this topic for last, because it's just kind of hilarious to me that people went through this lengthy and sketchy process knowing full well how dangerous it was, and yet still decided to ride the damn thing. The fact that we have footage of people going down this one after another is just crazy to me, and it's no wonder why this closed merely 1 month after it opened, because what you're looking at isn't just some incredibly dangerous attraction, which, believe me, we know what it is. It's something that honestly should have never existed in the first place, and the fact that it did and that people actually wrote it for a period of time is insane to me. And that, my friends, were this week's 3 disturbing moments caught on film. If you made it here, then you made it to the end of today's video. Man, this was really interesting to make. I'm getting a little bit more freeform with my disturbing moments series, and yeah, I wanted to try something a little different today. I know it kind of felt a little bit weird to put the Action Park story with the other 2, but I just felt like a video with the other 2 and then a worse story ending it just would have felt too sorrow for me. And yeah, I don't want to leave people off with that, we live in a day and age where it's so easy to make yourself believe one thing. When you're on TikTok and you're just endlessly scrolling, and it's so easy to convince yourself of something. I think that's what even happened with like the warehouse fire stuff. Like I only made that video because I was seeing so many TikToks about it. I was like, this has to be being talked about, and probably wasn't, judging by the views, like I just have to imagine that there's someone out there who's looking at all these disturbing stories and disturbing moments and maybe thinks the world's a bit darker than it actually is. And yeah, that's why I leave stuff like the Disney iceberg on my channel, or end videos off with a more funny approach to disturbing moments. And yeah, let me know if you guys like that, or if you want me to just keep it completely serious. I really enjoyed ending this one off on a little bit more of a high note. And I just want to, include some, just some positivity is all. Now, let's get to the patron shout out. If you're on screen, thank you for supporting the Patreon and supporting me. Again, the Patreon's free. There's no paywall behind it anymore. You can access all the content on there if you want. Go ahead and join it. And yeah, if you're on screen, you've been supporting me day in and day out, and it means a lot. It goes a long way, and it helps me buy new equipment and keep the channel going. So if you like what you're watching and you want to see more of it, go check the Patreon out. Don't have to donate if you don't want to, but it's just an extra place to get updates and whatnot. So yeah, with all of that said, I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.